Ask Reddit. Serious, dark web users of Reddit, was there ever a point in your use that you felt you were genuinely in danger? What happened? Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell button to never miss any of our future videos. Not the modern dark web, but back in the days of Usenet I posted some harsh CLH criticism in alt-religion Scientology. Yes, that was a typo for Scientology, but I'm leaving it for context of a bunch of posts. The online threats were funny, but when I started getting death threats by mail I backed the duck off. Edit. I didn't think this would blow up like it did, but to answer a few common questions, I posted a bunch of criticism of the COS and the Usenet group alt-religion Scientology. This was in the late 90s and well before most modern forums and content aggregators like Reddit existed. FARC was the big one and Dig was just starting to get popular. I was high school. For non-Americans, grades 9-12. I was in high school and was using my home computer as an FTP server for a Juarez group on Ike because I convinced my dad to sign up for a 90-day free trial of this new thing called broadband. I had 3 megabits per second down and 1.5 megabits per second up. Of course we never cancelled it. They figured out who I was by using a cute FTP vulnerability to get root directory access to my PC. The death threats were bad enough, but what really sticks with me is the malice of deleting my family photos, including the last picture is us with my dad while he was alive. I was the typical invincible feeling young adult and I was more concerned about worrying my mom than I was about my own safety. This was long before doxing was a thing, and online threats going from email to handwritten letters was terrifying. But as a high school kid I never would have admitted it. Nobody asked, but if I was confronted in person I would have fought back. 18 years later, if they really held a grudge and threatened me again with the same malice expressed in those letters I got, I would open the door with a gun in hand, and if they tried to get in, I would assume that they were intending to kill me and shoot first. This is a serious post, so as funny as it would be to accept the previous statement with the autocomplete error shit first, I fixed it. I've written a couple of books about the dark web, which means I've spent a bit of pretty much every day of the past 8 years poking around inside. Over the years I spoke to, interviewed, and even visited many dark web identities, drug dealers and operators of darknet markets mostly. I attended the trial of one of the most evil people on the planet, Lux, the owner of Her to the Core, a child torture site. Turned out to be a friendless, unhappy kid who built his evil empire from his childhood bedroom, with his parents blissfully unaware of what was happening under their noses. The only time I've felt even slightly in danger despite all this nosing around in there was when I helped uncover a hitman scam. The owner of Bisa Mafia, the most profitable murder for hire site in history, came after me when I started writing about him. He made loads of threats. You don't know who I am, but I know who you are and where you live. But that wasn't scary, as I had access to the back door of his site thanks to a friendly hacker and knew he didn't really want to hurt anybody. It took a bit of a darker turn when he told the people who had signed up to work as hitmen on his site, and who he made video themselves burning cars with signs on them to advertise how legit his site was, then never sent them the promised money for doing so, that I was the owner of the site who had ripped them off. That could have become ugly, but luckily even the thugs weren't dumb enough to believe him. The only other time I've been a bit nervous was when Homeland Security wanted to have a friendly meeting with me on one of my trips to the US to attend a trial. They were friendly, but scary too. I've never personally felt I was in actual danger, so to speak, since I take proper precautions. But early on I did accidentally come across a site forum while exploring that was filled with snuff photos of women people had assaulted and then knocked out or killed. Shut down my browser pretty quick after that, but felt uneasy for a long time after. Don't frequent it a lot, but once I accidentally left my browser in full screen and a stranger in a chat room asked me if my curved monitor was nice. Freaked me out a bit. Not dark web, but I wanted to install Windows 7 on my old PC, so I installed the .iso file from some website and everything was working good for like 1 hour, but then porn started appearing on my screen and I was like, what the duck? Chat box opened and camera turned on. He told me I have nice eyes, and after that I just turned off the PC and did a clean install of Windows 10. Webcam turned itself on once. That was scary. I immediately unplugged it and my network cable, ran 3 complete scans of my system for malware and viruses. Found nothing. Hasn't happened since. This happened to one of my friends. He said the camera turned on and he was redirected to another website where he saw his own face and some kind of official seal with an eagle on the side. He didn't read what any of that said because he shut down his PC as fast as he could. He was really quiet and anxious for the next days I saw him at school. The first day he looked very scared and even looked pale. This was what prompted me to ask what happened. Had a buddy who used to order weed. The distributor got busted and the postal service let him know there was a suspicious package for him. He could either pick it up or it would be destroyed. Did he go to receive the package? Not unless he is a total idiot. Getting an illegal package addressed to you leaves you with plausible deniability if you've purchased it anonymously and covered your tracks. You can say, "No thanks, I don't want anything to do with that because I have no idea what it is," and that'll be that. You just have to suck up the sunk costs. Trying to pick it up after you've been told it was suspicious and being held will earn you a nice talk with the authorities. I was a casual orderer of the dark web for a while and got pretty big into it and started buying slightly bulky packages of drugs. If you knew the markets for a while then you would know one called Alpha Bay was the best of the best. The Amazon of drugs and fraud would be its best description. However, it went down mysteriously one day and everyone assumed the owners just scammed everyone for their Bitcoin. Partially true, but in the background it was actually seized the DEA. Everyone flocked to a new site called Hansa which had some sketchy design features but it was the next best alternative. Turns out the Dutch police took over the site and with cooperation of multiple governments ran a drug distribution onion site with over $1 million of transactions for around a month. They were gathering information from unsuspecting users, including me, who bought with faulty security practices. Now this is where I started freaking out. Imagine trafficking drugs through the mail and the Attorney General at the time, Jeff Sessions, makes a speech live on television that he was going to crack down and explicitly explains how ducked everyone on Hansa was because they have been gathering data for over a month. And in a big dick energy move closes the site and puts up a banner in its place saying everyone who has purchased will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law during his live speech. I was shitting myself for a month as many arrests did occur, but luckily I guess I wasn't important enough and nothing happened to me. The idea that the dark web is an extremely shocking and dangerous place is largely inaccurate. It's mostly weird libertarian blogs and very sterile Amazon type websites for drugs, complete with reviews of different vendors. I remember my friend showing me where he bought his drugs online and seeing how well kept and formal it was. Like you said, it really was just an Amazon type website for drugs with friendly and thorough reviews. Even saw in red at the top something along the lines of, "Website name. Moderators will never ask for your password." I was pleasantly surprised to say the least, haha. Everything feels government owned. I used to frequent drug sites. They would go down for weeks at a time, then pop up again, have weird prices. Sellers were different. It made the dark web feel like a labyrinth more than a rule-less wasteland. I own a fairly rare car that had a rare error code. I looked it up on Google and there was only one other person on the car makers forum that had the same error. And this guy took months and months going back and forth between car shops and the forum thread to try to get the issue fixed. Everyone on the forum was pitching in to try to help him. So I kept going through this long forum thread to try to figure out if he ever fixed it. And suddenly there's no more replies from the guy. Everyone was scratching their heads for a while. We thought he had maybe gotten the issue fixed and didn't bother to update us on it. Then one day, a news article popped up about a really rich guy who died in a Thai jail cell. And then we connected the two stories and they matched up. The same make and model of the car in the news article matched up with his car. And they were both claiming to be in Thailand at the time. So what happened was that same guy who was still talking on the forums got raided by the Thai police around the same time he stopped replying to the forum. Turns out that he was running one of the biggest dark web marketplaces where drugs were being sold and exchanged. It had something like $1 million in revenue per day and he was hiding out in Thailand while living in luxury. They found him dead in his jail cell a few days later. They claim he died of suicide. I once bought a bit of weed and I received a blackmail letter threatening me with awful things, like sending CP and calling the police, if I didn't send one Bitcoin, $1,000 at the time. I was scared shitless but nothing ever happened. Always check the reviews before buying anything. Damn boy, should have invested in Bitcoin. You don't just stumble onto the scary parts of the dark web. You had to have been looking for something sinister if you happen to come across one of the sites. Even then, getting access to said sites isn't as easy, as most of them are invite based. Most of it is just the normal internet with questionable forums. Think 4chan but slightly worse. And petty drugs. It's very hard to reach the criminal parts of the dark web unless you have very specific URLs, and even then the host has the option to deny you access. However, once you're in, it can become a slippery slope. Accidentally stumbled upon some CP once. Noped out pretty fast but was still worried for weeks the FBI would come after me. The worst thing is, you can stumble across that shit on regular porn sites, too. I stumbled across some pics once on one of the more well-known sites, and there was no ducking visible option to report it. I don't think I've ever been so disgusted in my entire life. Yeah, I've heard a lot about those kinds of things on Pornhub, and it's insane how it's allowed to persist. There's hitmen, human trafficking and snuff films and such, but a vast majority of these sites are scams asking you to send them Bitcoin. A small portion of users on the dark web would be there for this sort of stuff. However, buying drugs online is quite popular and widespread. Single vendors can have $500,000 plus in lifetime sales. It's quite safe to use. You use PGP to encrypt your address so only the seller of the drugs has access to your private info. If your package is seized, they'll have no proof you ordered it unless they seize your computer and you have that information stored on it. You can use Tails USB to avoid this. Even if your packages get seized, you'll often get a love letter saying what they seized, and there is no follow-up after that. Be safe, boys and girls. Don't give out your information or communicate with others. And if you plan on purchasing anything, use a secure Linux OS like Tails. Use private keys. Connect to a public Wi-Fi spot, not your house. Encrypt all messages. Use multi-signature markets so your chances of losing your Bitcoin lessens. Escrow preferably. Never send your Bitcoins from a wallet attached to you directly to the seller. Tumble your coins first. And when the package arrives, don't open it for a few days. A friend of mine gave me all this info and told me I should help you guys out. The scariest moment for me was when I stumbled upon a creepy URL and thought it was something much more sinister, until I found out it was just an URL. The dark web isn't really that scary. It has been romanticized and exaggerated by creepypastas, TV shows and etc. Edit. I know stuff like the Red Room and CP exist on the dark web. It's just that it is not that common. Most are scams or require a membership. The common user won't find much, but you will find something really off-putting if you dig enough. In college, some friends and I ordered a 100 sheet of acid, using Bitcoin, to our college PO boxes. We got pretty terrified when it didn't arrive when it should have. We thought it was found by USPS, our own mail service, or the D. We were paranoid. Turns out they just shipped it later than they said. We got our 100 tabs, but that was a very stressful week and a half for all of us. Not really a dark web user, but I got doxed by a neo-Nazi group on the dark web and ended up having to use the dark web to find the websites that had my information. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI showed up on my doorstep because they were threatening to send me letter bombs and send people to abduct and arm me. It was scary shit. They all fell off the face of the earth recently, so I'm just hoping the feds got to them. A friend of mine used to use Silk Road on the darknet when Bitcoin was $10 a pop. He placed at least 100 orders through it and never had any issues. It's a shame he didn't keep all the Bitcoin he bought because he would have been a millionaire now. I actually learned how to access the dark web by listening to NPR. They had a segment where an author who was writing a book about it basically gave step-by-step instructions on how to do it. I did everything he said and, by golly, it worked. Truthfully, it was pretty underwhelming. Mostly just drugs and counterfeit items, passports, money, etc. I did find some weapons with the serial numbers scratched off, pistols and shotguns, but nothing that would start World War III. I also saw a couple ads for hitmen, but they seemed pretty hokey and were most likely undercover cops. I never felt in danger, but I have never gone back because there's nothing I really want from there. No government agents have kicked down my door, either.